Thanks for joining me, Andy. Perhaps you could explain a little bit about the origin of Earth Hour and the goal of Earth Hour.
Yeah, Earth Hour, the origins of Earth Hour were, I guess, a desire to connect with a mainstream audience on environmental issues, and particularly climate change at the start. We definitely had a sense, this is WWF, we had a sense that the conversation that was happening inside our organisation and with our campaigns was only reaching a small amount of people, so the kind of the 1%, the 5% who were already interested in green issues, and therefore, kind of talking to the converted. And the other end of the spectrum, people who really didn't care, and they found it interesting to argue about green issues. And so we were trying to find a project, a campaign that would embrace the 60% in the middle, the real mainstream audience. And I suppose also to prove a point in terms of we believed that people cared a lot more about environmental issues, the planet, climate change, than maybe they were given credit for.
So why do you think it's been so successful on a global basis?
Look, I think there's a few reasons, but the biggest one is that with an issue, particularly with an issue like climate change, an issue that is so enormous, that requires such massive action in order to address it, there's often a sense of despair that goes with it. And I think we maybe found a way of, and it is just a beginning, but we found a way of capturing hope and a desire to do something. And it's 1 hour, it's very symbolic, but it is the start, and I think that's the way we view it. It's a beginning of a process. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing was that a campaign not based on fear seemed to resonate much more than any campaign we'd done based on fear. And really putting it back on the people and empowering people to be participants and to own it themselves resonated as well. So I think there's a few reasons. There's probably a few more beyond that as well.
And what's been key to communicating that message?
Simplicity, a sense of empowerment to those taking part, but biggest of all is to make the campaign open source. So to realise our own limitations, to realise that there's only a few of us who started it, and thereby really embrace the idea that everyone has to own it, everyone has to run it for themselves, whether it's a mum or a dad or a kid in a school in a classroom or a CEO of a company. So sort of just giving it out there and making it open source, I think probably the key things.
And what's been the role of social media?
Well, at the beginning it was not that much, but over the years it's obviously grown incredibly, and it's now one of the major engines behind the success of Earth Hour. And again, it comes back to the idea that everyone has a role to play, and everyone has ownership over Earth Hour. And I think we have to encourage that more and more. I don't think we've gone anywhere near as far as we want to go in the future in terms of that ownership of Earth Hour by the people. But social media is a means by which people can communicate, have a global conversation, have a local conversation, and spread the word and share what they're doing. And what an amazing world that's opening up.
You must have learned a lot of lessons through this campaign. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah, there's a lot. When we started, it was, there was a lot of crossing our fingers and hoping that it would work. I think the great lessons, my favourite lessons are ones where it is constantly surprising how much people want to do something, and I think again we've only scratched the surface. So people are quite sometimes you get some cynicism around it's only an hour and what does it do, but I really genuinely believe that we underestimate how much people care and how much people get a personal sense of achievement by taking part in something like this. So that's a really big lesson: is don't underestimate the audience and how much people want to do stuff. In terms of technical stuff, operationally, we've learned a lot in terms of how do you build a campaign like this and how do you do it. Again, open source model, lot of doubts about it at the beginning. A lot of people were fearful about putting a brand out there or an idea out there and not having control over it. But actually, it's very self-policing, and that's a great lesson to learn. That the more you let go, almost the bigger it becomes, and the more democratic it becomes, and the more it's empowering. There's a lot of lessons, so I'll probably stop there.
But a lot of organisations are concerned about letting go of control, aren't they? And there's still that control and command mentality. What's your advice for them?
Look, I'm probably not the one to give advice because everything is different. Our experience has been one where we had the fear over creating an open source brand. But I think often with NGOs particularly, or organisations that don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing, you try to apply commercial or corporate models to an NGO brand, but you can't afford to buy advertising, you can't afford to run the same kind of campaign as, say, a Coca-Cola would run. So you really have to ask yourself a question: if you really want to get global reach, if you really want to reach a 60% mainstream audience, and if you really want to create a campaign or a social change on a massive scale, you're going to have to dump a lot of the rules that you are applying and are holding you back, and that's what we've learnt. Now, whether that applies to everyone is a different matter, but that's certainly the case for us, and the results sort of speak to themselves and speak for themselves in terms of how that's worked.
And what's the future of Earth Hour?
When we started Earth Hour, our dream was that we would bring the planet and its issues to the lives of everyday companies, people, city mayors. And I suppose you could change that now to: can you bring the issues of the planet and the planet alive on the laptops and mobile phones of people across the planet? Can you do something that goes beyond culture and beyond national boundaries and borders? And can you, from that, create a sense of momentum, or real momentum, where real action, tangible outcomes are being shared, driven, challenges are shared, and again, how to fix those challenges. If a kid in Beijing manages to clean up the local pond, and a kid in Rio wants to do the same thing, it's probably a rubbish example, but can you connect those people so they can share how they've done it? So really the dream for Earth Hour is to create that global conversation, almost a marketplace for environmental, planetary ideas, and how you fix them. And overall, it is start to embrace what can be done, not what can't be done, and not hide behind it's all too big. And that's really the aggregate of everyone's actions that will, we hope, help that happen.
It's fantastic. Well, congratulations on your success, and thanks for sharing your tips with us.
No worries.